I'm going to read to you from Genesis chapter 41, verse 50 and 52. It says, "Before the years of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. And Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh, and said, 'It is because God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's house.' And the second son he named Ephraim, and said, 'It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering.'" New Year's Eve is it's a time of resolution. People make their New Year's resolutions. There is an opportunity. It is an opportunity for change. That's what it gives to you. When you're coming out of something that's old and into something new, there is an opportunity that you have to be able to change. And I'm just wondering, on New Year's Eve, when you're having your celebrations, are you celebrating what was, or are you celebrating what's going to come? Because if you want to place yourself in the perfect position for being able to have God rewrite your history, then you want to put yourself into celebrating what is to come. Because if you can step into something new and something good and something perhaps greater than you've ever tasted before in your life, then what it will do is it'll rewrite your shadows. It'll rewrite those things of the past and put them in new light. So when you're reading a book, an adventure, all throughout my life, my favorite book has been Lord of the Rings. Well, of course, there's the Bible. Nothing beats it, but that is the book. And every other book is an attempt to in some way do something that could possibly reflect what is in Scripture. But all of my life I've enjoyed reading Lord of the Rings right back to when I was a little boy. And when you read it for the first time, you're on a knife's edge. You've got 1,200 pages ahead of you. And as it starts off, you're in this lovely setting where everything is peaceful and quiet and enjoyable, and it's just a beautiful time that everybody is having. Unfortunately, one of the things about being in this peaceful, enjoyable place is that everybody around you is fairly naive, is completely, in a way, unaware of what is taking place out in the darkness of the world. And so when you have a wizard come to town in the form of Gandalf, you know that something is up. It's both exciting to see the wizard, but it also has a portent to it. This young fellow, his name is Frodo, and he gets commissioned to go out on an adventure. And you're sort of torn because he's in this idyllic setting. He's where all of us would like to be, where there's no trouble and no bother. The worst thing you've got to be worried about is what you're going to eat when you're having 11sies, when you're having third breakfast, or when are you going to celebrate the next party? That's the biggest problem that you've got. And so you kind of want him to stay because it's nice and enjoyable, but at the same time, we all know what it's like to have an adventure, and so you kind of say, well, go on, get out and have an adventure. By the time you're halfway through the book, you're saying, what have you done? You should never have left home. And he's thinking that too. Yes. It's only when you get to the end of the book that you that you get to see all of the trials and the troubles and the near-death experiences that he has, that all of that gets put into perspective. Only when you get to the end do you see that it was worth all the hardship and worth all the trouble and worth all the struggle. And when Frodo goes back to the Shire, you find that he is now too big for where he was. His character has grown. He has become something monumental. When you read in Scripture what happens at the end, something similar takes place, and that we get to interpret all of our present day troubles in the light of what is to come. That if you have read the last page, then all of your struggles and all of your problems and all of your issues are in the shadow of what is to come. Because it seems hard at times. It seems troublesome at times. At times it seems ridiculous what God is putting me through. But because of what is ahead, I get to interpret my yesterdays. Yes. So Joseph here, he's had a hard time. He's had his troubles and he's had his struggles, and his brothers tried to kill him. Joseph's story has about 40 different parallels with Christ. Around about 40 connections, 40 what we call types, typologically, 40 reflections of the life of Christ. It's quite astounding, really, because over and over again you're reading about Joseph, and you could move immediately to the gospel story and see the same thing. It's like the gospel hidden within the life of someone 2,000 years before or 1,500 years before. And we call that a shadow. The Bible calls it a shadow. When something in the Old Testament is pointing out something of the New, it's said to be a shadow. But you wouldn't realize that it was a shadow if it wasn't for the New Testament, for the life of Jesus. You wouldn't know, you wouldn't be able to read back and interpret what was going on in Joseph's life in a redemptive, Christ-like kind of manner unless you had Jesus. And so we think that we can go into the old and see what's going to happen up ahead, but it's not like that. It's like what happens at the cross through Christ, we can then interpret what was going on back then. And so you look at Joseph and you see his brothers, and they want to kill him. He is rejected by his brethren. Yes, just like Jesus was rejected by his brethren. He's, for want of all purposes, put to death. I know they don't literally kill him, but a type, you don't need to literally do it to make it symbolic or emblematic of what is to come. They consider him to be as dead. They kill an animal in his place and put it on his coat of many colors as evidence of the fact that he is dead. And as far as his father is concerned, they tell him, your son is dead. He's dead. Well, is this his coat? course, it's his coat. They despised that coat. They were glad to have it covered in blood. You know, just like when Abraham was taking Isaac up to the mountain and was about to bring that knife down on top of his son and kill his son Isaac, and God stepped in and said, "No, hold it. You don't need to do it." That is a type of the Father sending his Son to be crucified. So it doesn't have to be fulfilled literally for it to be symbolically what is taking place in the life of Christ. Christ shines a light on what is taking place back then. And then they throw him in a pit, just like Jesus was buried. And then they pull him out again, and that's the resurrection. Yes. And so there's all of these types that the cross shines a light upon in the life of Joseph. And you're saying, well, what has that got to do with New Year's and resolutions and everything that you're talking about? Well, just this I read to you. Before the years of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh and said, "It is because God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household." And the second son he named Ephraim and said, "It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." So Joseph was rejected by his brethren, just like Christ was rejected by his. And then Joseph fell in love with the daughter. Her name was Asenath, daughter of the priest of On, whose name was Potiphera. He's married into a heathen configuration, and that is a scandal. That is a scandal, but it is emblematic, typological. It's a type, it's a shadow. Yeah, it's a reflection of Jesus through the scandal of the cross, coming to earth, falling in love with his bride, rejected by his brethren, but falling in love with those who were not a people, and making them a people so that they could be one with him. That's what that's all about. That's what's going on there. And we come into the story at a time where there is some fruit from this union. And the first fruit that we see is the fruit of forgetfulness. Being able to forget what is in the past. And so he says that he named his firstborn Manasseh. It's because God has made me to forget all my trouble. All my trouble. Have you been able to forget all your trouble? Have you been able to forget all of your trouble? Because Joseph is talking to you, and he's saying there is a place in God where you can find the ability to forget all of your trouble. There's a place in God. You've got to find that place in God where you can forget your troubles. No more nursing and rehearsing the past. No more rolling over in your mind as you're drifting off to sleep all of the people that have done you wrong. Do you mean to say, after all that Jesus has done for you, all of the forgiveness, all of the healing, all of the blessing, all of the favor that he's put onto your life, all of the ability to be able to set you free from the things that at one time controlled your life, but yet you still go to bed angry? Yet you still go to sleep worried and troubled by things from the past. Joseph says, there's a place in God. It's a fruitful place. It's a place where you can forget what is behind. But that's not the only son that Joseph had. He also gave birth to Ephraim. And so the second type, the second thing that we can look at in this time of productivity in Joseph's life, the second thing we can pick up from this is Joseph said that he is named Ephraim. It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. God has made me fruitful in the very place where I have been struggling, where I have been wondering, God, what have you done to me? I was sold as a slave. I was put in prison, and I didn't do anything wrong. What have you got me here for? Well, in the light of what is to come, we can see why everything took place. It means that God can bless you. You don't have to leave where you're at. You don't have to leave that job that you're in. God can bless you right where you're at. Right where you're at. Right where you are. This is what you can see in the shadows because of what Jesus has done upon the cross. You don't get a shadow without there being some light. When you're living in the shadows, there is a light that has been shone. You can't see everything how it is. I've got a bit of a shadow happening down here underneath me. It's behind me. It's all around me. And yeah, I've got a bit of a shadow going on here. But this shadow doesn't tell you the color of my shirt, does it? It lets you know. It can let you know I'm wearing. It won't tell you the texture. It won't tell you that he's wearing linen today. You know. I wonder what he's wearing. Is it nylon? Or is it cotton? No, it's linen. But the shadow can't tell you everything. But in the light, you can see everything clearly. Yes, yes. And so as we go through Joseph's life, things become clearer and clearer. The closer we move on, the closer we get to the light. You know, we might be living in the shadows and not see and understand everything, but there is a light up ahead. Yes. So the next thing that I want to talk about from this is something that needs to happen in Joseph's life, because when I read there about his first son being born, and he said, it's because God has made me to forget all my trouble and all my father's household. When I read that, I thought, oh yes, he's got a problem still. The pain of the thoughts of what has happened is so strong, so painful, that he's had to bury them, that he has not been able to assimilate them, to be able to see them in the light of God. And so he talks about forgetting his dad, his brothers, his mother, the sources of his trouble. It's only when Joseph's brothers land on his doorstep that he has the opportunity to work through everything. I don't know if you remember that bit of the story there, but he's dealing with them and he's hiding himself. That's what we do. That's what we do. When we're confronted with things from our past, we put up barriers because we are not able to deal with those things as yet. And so he's protecting himself, and he's dealing with them. And then he goes out into a back room and he bursts out crying. You can see there's some heart work being done in Joseph's life. Heart work, as they say, is hard work. Heart work is hard work. Yes, it's only till later. We're talking, this is many years, many years after what took place. This is after 13 years of being in slavery and in prison. This is after 7 years of, 7 good years of abundance, 7 years of abundance and promotion, and 7 years of hardship that didn't touch Joseph at all. And then his brothers go off and they bring back their father. And then his father's coming to the end of his life. And his brothers are worried that when his father dies, that Joseph is going to exact vengeance. And Joseph says to them, and this is where you know that there has been enough heart work taken place in Joseph for him to be able to be walking free. He says to them, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. Glory be to God, that's for somebody here today. That no matter what the enemy does to you for evil, God allows within your life for good. Whatever trial and struggle and difficulty you go through, God is working in it for good. Yes, the devil is working in it for evil. Yes, you can say it's the devil, but God is in that, working it for good. Yeah. All right, so that's 3 things we've found out here about Joseph, that all happening here through the birth of his sons and then into his future. And when his father, Jacob, is on his deathbed, Joseph takes these 2 boys to visit his father. And this is what his father says. His father says, your sons I will take as my own. Any other children you have, they're yours. But I'm taking these as my own. There's a lot of things going on in that. There's a lot of things going on. There is, well, what is mainly going on is that Jacob is saying, I'm going to make sure that both of your sons get a piece of territory in the promised land. That's what's mainly going on here. There's more. Because he says, bring them to me and I will bless them. And so Joseph is strategic, and he places his oldest son, Manasseh, on Jacob's right-hand side so that Jacob can give him the right-hand blessing that gives him greater favor, higher privilege, higher position, authority over the other boy. Right? But the other boy's also going to get a blessing. There's a lot of things going on here. One of the things going on here is way back when Jacob was born. Remember, Jacob was a twin. And there was a fight going on in his mother's womb. It was Rachel, wasn't it? Was it Rachel's womb? I always get Rachel and Rebecca mixed up. But in Rachel's womb, there was this fight going on. And a prophecy comes forward that says the older shall serve the younger. And that's what happened. Jacob's father, Isaac, wanted to bless Esau, but through connivery, Jacob got the blessing. Yes. And so there is a continuation taking place. Here we've got an older and a younger. And you know what happens? Jacob, when it comes to the when it comes, somebody's been reading my story, because I just saw somebody do what Jacob did. Here's the older, there's the younger. And Jacob, lying there in bed, goes like this, so that his right hand goes on the younger Ephraim, and his left hand goes on the older, which is Manasseh. And Jacob gets all defensive and he goes, no, 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 this is not how it's meant to be. Manasseh is the older. He should get your blessing. And Jacob says, you don't understand what's going on here, son. You'll understand when it comes to Jesus on the cross. And right there, he makes the sign of the cross. Right there, yes. As he's blessing the children. Yeah, yeah. One more thing. Jacob then says to Joseph, I'm going to give you the land that I fought for with sword and with my bow. I'm going to give you that land, the ridge where I defeated the Amorites. The Amorites are giants. In the book of Amos, Amos tells us that the Amorites were as tall as cedars. Og. You know you're dealing with a giant when his name is Og. Og was the last king of the Rephaites. He was an Amorite. Yes. And Jacob is saying, I'm going to give you the land of the giants. But the only way that you're going to be able to live in the land where the giants used to inhabit is if you go through the cross. Yeah. Do you see how important this is? See how important this is? And how relevant this is today. That in order for us to be able to enjoy and experience better things ahead, we've got to see everything in the light of the cross. And I've got one more thing to say. That Joseph, when all of this was going on, was having to relax and be flexible and not be rigid and have things his way. And if there's a word I think that God would have for us as a church coming into 2025, it would be, we've got to be flexible. Yes. Yes. And I'm not sure even what that means, but I believe that God spoke to me while I was preparing this message and was saying to us as a church to be flexible. To me and Sasha, that we have to be flexible. That here's a saying, it's worthy of being in the Beatitudes, but it didn't quite get there. Well, it sort of got there, because Jesus there talks about the wineskin, but this is the saying that fits with the Beatitudes. Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken. Yeah, I know. I wish Jesus had put it there. But I kind of take it from the blessed are's and I add it to the wineskin bit. Because if the wineskin is hard and rigid, it breaks and you lose the wine. But if the wineskin is your life, it is your structure, is how you do things, how you live your life, how you work through your day. If you're not flexible, yeah, I can struggle with this myself because I like things to be in order. I like to know what's coming ahead of time. I like to set myself, prepare myself, And when something comes out of the blue, Sasha gets excited. And I go, oh, I'm ready for this. And it can tend to break me. I can lose a bit of the wine.
I have to get it patched up, you know. So, out of all that I've said today, after all that I've said today, I know that God is speaking. In fact, He's been speaking with us. Excuse me. Speaking with us from the time that we've been singing and worship. What a wonderful thing it is that we can sing and worship. Thanks, Bo. If you can come up, that'd be great. What a wonderful thing it is that we can sing and worship and declare praises, declare the glory of God in our lives. What a wonderful thing that is that we can join with angels and participate with things that are taking place in heaven as well as down here on earth. And anything that comes in our lives that resists that, through our praise, and through our worship, and through the preaching of the word, we have opportunity for God to deal with that. So I know that as I've been speaking, that God has been speaking to you. I know that through our worship, that God has been speaking with yourselves. He was speaking with me, you know, stirring me up. That prophetic word that came through about running into the year and being straight and not looking to the left, to the right, and you know, those words all kind of came together for me and said, no deviating, no deviating, certainly no turning back. Yes.